Why did you come?" "We don't want you," hissed my daughter-in-law at her baby shower, the very one I had paid for. I didn't flinch. I adjusted the hem of my emerald green dress, pretending to smooth creases that weren't there, and gave her a smile that made a few nearby women shift uncomfortably in their seats. "I'll go," I told her, voice steady as stone. "But before I leave, you'll meet someone you worked very hard to erase." She didn't reply. She shrieked, "Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from." The mirror that morning had shown me a woman I barely knew. 70 years of living written across my face, every wrinkle a footnote to some sacrifice, yet my eyes still burned with the same quiet determination that had fueled me through decades of starting with nothing and building a life. That fire was my companion today, and I suspected it might be the only weapon I needed. The invitation had been tossed in my trash bin 2 weeks earlier, then pulled out again late at night, smoothed flat and read once more, as if the words might somehow alter their meaning. Baby shower for Melissa Harrington. Saturday, 2 p.m. Registry at Neiman Marcus. Melissa, my son Daniel's wife, expecting their second child. My second grandchild, though my claim to that word felt tenuous these days. The bitter joke, of course, was that I had financed the entire event. The venue, the catering, the decor, all charged to the credit card I had once handed Daniel for emergencies. Over $4,000 drained from my account for a gathering where I was not welcome. Even now, the knowledge left a taste like spoiled medicine at the back of my throat. Before slipping my purse over my shoulder, I checked one last time that everything I intended to bring was there. The cashier's check for $25,000, earmarked for the baby's trust fund, and, hidden in a side pocket, a plain manila envelope delivered 3 days ago by a private investigator I had hired half a year earlier. Patience, I had discovered, can become its own sort of power. The drive from my small colonial house in Concord, New Hampshire, to the country club took 40 minutes, enough time to rehearse imaginary conversations, though I knew rehearsals were useless when real emotions surfaced. I let Vivaldi's Four Seasons fill the car. That music had played at my wedding to Daniel's father almost 40 years ago. Back then, I believed in fairy tales. After Michael died when Daniel was 12, I had shouldered both roles, breadwinner and comforter, disciplinarian and cheerleader. I worked nights at the hospital cafeteria, mornings at the library desk, giving up new shoes, vacations, even full dinners at times, just so Daniel could remain in private school and take his violin lessons. I had believed those choices would bind us together for life. When Daniel introduced Melissa 5 years ago, I'd been guarded but hopeful. She had the glossy hair and easy confidence of someone raised with money. I had reached out, inviting her into traditions, sharing family stories, buying her little gifts. I thought we were building something real. The first crack came at their engagement dinner. I'd mentioned Daniel's middle name, Michael, after his father. Melissa had smiled that tight smile of hers and corrected me. "Not anymore. We've decided he'll go by David. Michael is so old-fashioned." Daniel stared at his plate, and I swallowed something cold that lodged deep in my chest. After the wedding, the distance widened, neatly and deliberately. Holidays were suddenly too hectic. Our weekly Sunday meals slid into monthly phone calls, then quarterly, then nothing at all. When their first daughter, Lillian, was born, I didn't hear it from Daniel. A neighbor showed me the announcement clipped from the union leader. By the time I pulled into the country club lot, I had rehearsed and discarded 20 versions of what I might say. SUVs and imported sedans filled the parking rows. Inside the banquet hall, through tall windows, I glimpsed pastel streamers and women in designer dresses sipping champagne. My absence, clearly, had not cast a shadow over the celebration. At the reception desk, the hostess gave me a perfunctory smile. "Mrs. Harrington, I don't see your name on the guest list." "I'm the grandmother," I replied evenly, and something in my tone made her step aside without another word. The banquet room glittered with money. A balloon arch framed a table groaning with wrapped packages. In the center, Melissa perched like a monarch presiding over court, her silk gown draped perfectly over her rounded stomach. Her laughter rang clear, slicing through the buzz of voices. Then she saw me. The sound died. Conversations faltered, then ceased entirely. Dozens of eyes followed her gaze to the doorway where I stood. "Eleanor," Melissa's voice rang sharp, her expression unyielding. She didn't rise. She didn't smile. "What are you doing here?" I walked forward, heels striking the polished wood, each step deliberate. The room might as well have been a courtroom, every woman present acting as witness, judge, and jury. "I came to celebrate my grandchild," I said, lifting the slim envelope holding the trust check. "And to give you this." Her mother, Denise, appeared at her side, her face tightening like a curtain drawn. "This is a private event, Eleanor. Family only." Family. I let the word roll on my tongue like something sour. "Yes," I answered softly. "Let's talk about family." Melissa's face flushed crimson. She forced herself upright, one hand braced against the chair. "You weren't invited. You know that. We've been through this already." "Have we?" I set my purse down on the nearest chair, as final as slamming a gavel. "Because I've been giving family a lot of thought lately. The ties we pretend bind us. The secrets we pretend don't exist." Something flickered behind her eyes. Fear or recognition. "I don't know what you mean," she said too quickly. I smiled. The same smile I'd worn during staff meetings when younger colleagues underestimated me. The same smile I'd offered teachers who doubted Daniel's aptitude for advanced classes. The same smile I'd kept steady through the lean years when debt collectors knocked at the door. "Oh, but I think you do," I said softly. My hand dipped into the purse and drew out the manila envelope, holding it upright like a final trump card. "You see, Melissa, I've had some very enlightening conversations with people from your past, people you thought would never surface again." The color drained from her face. Around us, women shifted uncomfortably. Even the servers halted mid-step, frozen as if waiting for direction. "Why did you come?" she whispered finally, though her words carried across the silence. "We don't want you." There it was. The curtain dropped. No polite fictions, no carefully staged excuses, just rejection, raw and public, handed down in front of 40 witnesses, in a room financed by my savings, at a celebration honoring a child I might never be allowed to know. Something shifted inside me then. Not relief, not exactly, but a release. Like a lock turning at last after years of fumbling keys. The hurt remained, sharp as ever, but beneath it rose something stronger, something that had been waiting. "I'll go," I said. My voice was calm, immovable. "But first, let me introduce you to someone you fought hard to bury." I pulled a photograph from the envelope and held it so only she could see. Her gasp was audible, followed by her hand flying to her throat. The confident mask she wore cracked down the middle. I wasn't finished. From the envelope came a business card, its elegant lettering spelling a name she hadn't heard spoken aloud in nearly 8 years. The instant her eyes registered it, she screamed. The sound tore through the banquet hall, high and raw, drawing gasps from every corner. Someone dropped a champagne flute. Conversation didn't just stop, it collapsed entirely, the room echoing with her panic. Melissa staggered backward, gripping the chair, her face drained white. "No," she croaked. "No, you couldn't have. You don't know anything." I slid the items back into the envelope, movements calm while chaos gathered around us. "Actually, Melissa," I said, voice steady, "I know everything." The room vibrated with tension. 100 eyes darted between us, waiting for the next blow. "What is this about?" Denise demanded, protective instinct sharpening her words. But I didn't answer her. I watched Melissa sink into her seat, one trembling hand clutching her chest. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked breakable. "Melissa knows precisely what this is about," I said, my tone cutting across the silence. "Don't you, dear?" Her lips quivered. "Please," she whispered. "Please don't do this. Not here. Not now." Her desperation should have stirred compassion. But I remembered Lillian, my 3-year-old granddaughter, whom I had seen only twice. The Christmas gifts I sent returned unopened. The birthday cards that never reached her. The polite distance in Daniel's voice when he spoke to me now, as though I were some distant relative. That part of me that once craved connection with Melissa withered quietly. "Oh, but Melissa," I said, drawing another sheet from the envelope. "Surely your friends would love to hear about your time in Scottsdale, about your work at Desert Crest Manor, about Mrs. Valerie Houghton." Melissa turned ashen. Her hands clutched the chair arms so tightly her knuckles blanched. Her sister Claire stepped forward, alarm widening her eyes. "Melissa, what is she talking about?" "It's nothing," Melissa stammered. Just a misunderstanding at my old job. Nothing came of it." But the fear in her eyes gave her away. "Nothing came of it?" I tilted my head. True enough. The lawsuit was settled, records sealed, very expensive for Desert Crest. Quite convenient for you. From the envelope, I lifted a newspaper clipping, yellowed with age. The headline was unambiguous. "Elderly woman dies after nursing home neglect allegations." "Scottsdale Tribune, August 12th, 8 years ago," I said. "Valerie Houghton, 84, passed from untreated bed sores. Her family filed suit for negligence. You were her primary caregiver." A ripple of gasps moved across the room. Melissa shot to her feet. "You can't prove anything. They investigated. They found nothing." "The police investigated a theft," I corrected softly. "But they never discovered the falsified medication records, did they? Or how you withheld her painkillers to sell them outside." The banquet hall erupted in shock. Women whispered frantically. Chairs scraped. Denise gripped Melissa's arm, stricken. Melissa's denial cracked. "None of that is true." I drew the final object from the envelope. A small recorder. "Am I lying? Because yesterday I spoke to someone who worked with you, someone who's been silent for 8 years, but is ready now to tell the truth." Melissa collapsed into her chair. "No," she whispered, eyes darting like a trapped animal. "Please, I'm pregnant. I have children. Please." Her plea almost sounded human. Almost. "You should have thought of that," I answered coldly, "before you decided I wasn't family." And then Daniel's voice cut through the chaos. "Mom, what the hell is happening here?" He stood in the doorway, disheveled from rushing, face flushed with alarm. For a moment I saw my boy again, scraped knees and broken toys, trusting me to fix whatever was broken. "Daniel," I said softly, "I was just leaving." "No, you're not leaving," Daniel said firmly, striding across the room. His eyes darted between Melissa's crumpled figure and my steady posture. "Not until somebody explains what's going on." Melissa reached for him desperately, her hands clutching his sleeve. "She's lying, Daniel. She's making up horrible things. She wants to ruin us. Please don't listen. His gaze shifted to me, a flicker of the boy he once was swimming behind his adult eyes. For a heartbeat, I saw the child who used to run to me after nightmares, believing I could protect him from anything. "Mom," he said, his voice tight. "Tell me what this is about." I inhaled slowly, steadying myself. "Ask her about Scottsdale, about Desert Crest Manor, about Valerie Houghton. Ask her why she really left Arizona." Daniel's face drained of color. He turned to Melissa, confusion etched across every line. "Melissa, what is she talking about?" Melissa opened her mouth, but no words came. Her lips parted, closed again, trembling as though even her lies had deserted her. I picked up my purse, sliding the envelope onto the gift table beside a stack of neatly wrapped boxes. "The check is in there, Daniel," I said over my shoulder. $25,000 for the baby. Consider it a parting gift." "Eleanor, wait." Denise's voice cracked through the silence, urgent. She had snatched up the newspaper clipping, her expression grim. "Is this real?" I met her eyes without blinking. "Every word. Your daughter has hidden who she truly is for years. Perhaps you've known." I didn't wait for her reply. My heels echoed across the parquet floor as I left the banquet hall, the hum of voices rising behind me in a crescendo of panic and disbelief. Outside, the spring air wrapped cool around my shoulders. Blossoms drifted from cherry trees along the drive, pale pink petals scattering like confetti. For a moment I stood beneath them, my breath shaking as adrenaline ebbed. 7 months of waiting, of digging, of planning, and it had all detonated in those few minutes. The first act was finished. The rest, I knew, would be messier. Back home, I sat at my kitchen table, coffee cooling beside me as dawn light painted my garden gold. The phone rang incessantly. Unknown numbers, Melissa's friends, even Denise. But I let them all go to voicemail. The only call I answered came from Detective Ramirez in Phoenix. "Mrs. Carter." His voice was gravelly, weathered by decades on the force. "I've reviewed the materials you sent. This is substantial." "I thought you'd find it interesting," I replied, stirring cream into my cup with deliberate calm. "And the witness you mentioned, Helen Grady, she's truly willing to testify?" "She's carried the guilt for 8 years. She's ready to finally tell the truth." There was silence on the line, the kind that comes when someone is weighing consequences. "You understand, if we reopen this case, it will get complicated. The settlement, the sealed files, the non-disclosure agreements, it will be messy. Lawyers, media, fallout." "I understand perfectly," I said. "And your daughter-in-law, she has children. If this goes forward..." For the briefest second, hesitation prickled at me. Images of Lillian's small face, her dark eyes wide, her hair in soft braids. My granddaughter, almost a stranger to me. Another baby on the way, innocent in all this. But then I remembered Valerie Houghton, dying in agony while Melissa withheld the medication she was owed. Valerie had no family left to fight for her. If I didn't give her a voice now, no one ever would. "Someone must speak for Valerie," I said finally. Detective Ramirez's exhale crackled through the line. "I'll be in touch." The click of the receiver was followed almost immediately by my doorbell ringing. Through the frosted glass, Daniel's tall silhouette loomed. He stood on the porch longer than he ever had in his life, as though gathering the courage to enter. When I opened the door, the boy I had raised was gone, replaced by a man hollowed by betrayal. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair unkempt, his eyes rimmed red. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside. He walked into the living room, the same room where I'd once helped him with math homework and patched up bruised knees. He looked around as if the space was suddenly foreign to him. then sank into his father's old armchair. "Is it true?" he asked bluntly. "Which part?" I countered. "Any of it. All of it." He raked his hands through his hair, a gesture I remembered from his teenage years when life seemed overwhelming. "She won't talk to me, Mom. She just keeps saying you're lying, that you've always hated her, that you want to break us apart. But she won't explain. She won't tell me about Arizona, about this Valerie woman. Why would you invent something like this?" I lowered myself onto the sofa, meeting his gaze. "What do you think, Daniel?" His voice cracked. "I think I don't know my wife at all." The words sliced through me. I should have felt vindicated, but instead my chest ached with a hollow sorrow. "She was different when we met," he continued, his voice shaking. "Guarded, yes, but she told me her family life was complicated, that she left Arizona because of trouble at work. I thought it was petty office drama. I didn't press. I wanted to trust her. Now I don't know what to believe." I let the silence stretch before answering. "The money in Lillian's college fund. Where do you think it came from?" He swallowed. Pain etched across his features. "She told me her grandmother left her something, but the timing lines up, doesn't it? The lawsuit. Valerie's death." "Exactly." Daniel closed his eyes, whispering almost to himself. "My daughter's future is being funded by stolen money." Neither of us spoke for a long while. Outside, our neighbor strolled by with her dachshund, oblivious to the fracture widening inside my home. "Why now?" he finally asked, voice low. "Why bring this up now?" "Would you have believed me earlier?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. We both knew the answer. "She's been chipping away at our bond for years," I said quietly, "making me the problem, the nuisance, the embarrassment, and you let her." Daniel winced. "I never said you were a nuisance." "You didn't have to. You stopped calling. You stopped visiting. You made excuses every time I asked to see you. You chose her version of things over me." His silence admitted the truth. "And so I hired someone," I continued. 7 months ago, after she told me I wasn't welcome at Lillian's birthday party because it was immediate family only. That was when I realized she wasn't just shutting me out. She was erasing me." Daniel stared at the carpet, lost. "What do you want me to do?" It was the question I had been turning over for days. Did I want justice for Valerie? Revenge on Melissa? My son back? My grandchild's love? All of the above seemed greedy. Some might never be possible. "I want you to be a father who protects his children," I said at last. "Whether that means protecting them from their mother's past or from your grandmother's truth, that's for you to decide." Daniel stood abruptly, pacing to the mantel where photographs lined the surface. His toothless grin at 10, his awkward prom tux, his wedding day with Melissa radiant at his side. He lifted the wedding photo, staring at it as though it might speak. "She wants to move," he said finally. "Last night, after everything, she said we should relocate, start fresh somewhere far away." "Where?" "Oregon, maybe Washington, somewhere no one knows us." Of course. She had run from Arizona once. Now she was preparing to run again, taking my grandchildren with her, vanishing before the truth caught up. "And what did you tell her?" I asked. "That I needed time." My phone buzzed. A text from Helen. Detective called. "I'm flying in tomorrow. Thank you for giving me courage." I showed Daniel. He paled. "It's really happening," he whispered. "You're going to destroy her." "I'm going to make sure Valerie gets justice," I replied. "If that destroys Melissa, that's her doing." He turned to the window, staring out at the street where he had once learned to ride his bike, where he had played kickball until dusk. "Lillian asks about you," he said quietly. She wants to know why Grandma Eleanor never visits. The words twisted deep inside me. And what do you tell her? That you're busy, his voice cracked. But she's smart. She knows something's wrong. Children always do. Daniel's jaw set, a steeliness forming in his eyes that reminded me of myself. If Melissa really did what you say, if she could let an old woman suffer like that, then she's not the woman I thought I married. No, I agreed. She's not. He stared at me, the weight of realization breaking him apart piece by piece. Part of me wanted to soften the blow. Another part stayed silent. Finally, he pulled out his phone. "Donovan, it's Daniel. I need some time off. Family emergency. Starting now." 3 days of silence followed. No calls, no texts. Only the relentless ticking of the grandfather clock in my hallway as I filled hours with meaningless chores, rearranging cabinets, pruning roses, folding laundry twice. My mind churned with questions. Had I saved my son or doomed him? On the 4th day, Daniel returned, but this time he wasn't alone. Lillian's small hand was curled in his, her wide eyes scanning my porch with cautious curiosity. She wore a yellow sundress embroidered with daisies, her hair in 2 neat braids. "Grandma Eleanor," she said softly, the words tentative but clear. The sound nearly undid me. "Hello, sweetheart," I whispered, crouching down. Up close, I could see Melissa's delicate bone structure in her, but Daniel's steady gaze. "You've grown so much," she giggled. "Daddy says I'm growing like a weed." "What's a weed?" Before I could answer, Daniel nudged her toward the door. "Why don't you see if Grandma has any books you'd like? I remember there being some good ones." Lillian's face lit up. She darted inside, fearless, as though she had always belonged here. I turned back to my son. "She doesn't know," he said quietly. "Melissa thinks she's at my sister's. She was planning to leave tonight. Packed bags, bought a ticket to Seattle." The cold settled in my stomach. "And the baby?" "She wanted to take Lillian too. I told her no." Through the window, I saw my granddaughter curled in my reading chair, opening a worn copy of Where the Wild Things Are. Daniel's shoulders sagged. I confronted her. About Arizona, about Valerie, about everything. At first she denied it, but when I mentioned the detective, she broke, admitted to the money, said her student debt crushed her, that she panicked, tried to justify it. But when she talked about Valerie, I saw something cold in her eyes, like she didn't care. My chest tightened. Some lines, once crossed, could never be uncrossed. "She keeps saying she's not that person anymore," he continued, "that it was 8 years ago, that she was desperate. But if she could do that once, what else is she capable of?" Through the window, Lillian turned a page, her small lips moving silently as she sounded out words. She looked so innocent, so unguarded, oblivious to the storm surrounding her. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "I don't know. Part of me wants to let her go, file for divorce, keep Lillian safe, but the baby." He dragged a hand through his hair, exhausted. "I don't know how to protect everyone at once." "You can't," I said gently. "Sometimes protecting your children means making hard choices about the adults around them." Daniel leaned against the porch railing, older somehow, broken in ways he couldn't hide. "I let her push you out. I let her turn me against you. And now I don't even know if I can forgive myself." "You were in love," I said. "You saw what you wanted to see." Lillian's voice called from inside. "Grandma, will you read to me?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Of course, sweetheart." She settled against me as I began reading aloud, her tiny body tucked into my side, her trust absolute. Daniel watched from across the room, his expression unreadable. When Lillian drifted to sleep, Daniel whispered, "She loves you already. Even though Melissa tried to erase you, she loves you." I brushed a braid back from her forehead. Children know who's safe. Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced down, his face hardening. "Melissa. Her flight leaves in 2 hours. She wants to know if I've come to my senses." "And have you?" I asked. He looked at Lillian, then at me. "Not anymore. Not after this." 3 weeks later, I sat on a hard wooden bench inside the Superior Court of Merrimack County. The courtroom smelled faintly of polish and dust, sunlight filtering through tall windows, painting stripes across the floor. The criminal proceedings had already concluded. Melissa had entered a plea agreement after Helen testified, and Detective Ramirez presented the evidence. But today was different. Today was about custody, about the future of 2 children whose lives had been ripped apart by their mother's secrets. Melissa sat at the defense table, her orange prison uniform swallowing her frame. Her hair, once glossy and styled, was pulled back into a severe bun. She looked far older than her 32 years. In her arms she had briefly cradled baby James, born in the prison infirmary only 8 weeks ago, before a court officer carried him to Denise for temporary care. Melissa hadn't glanced at me once since entering the room. Daniel sat on the opposite side with his attorney. Lillian sat beside him in the pale green dress I had bought her, her small hands folded neatly in her lap. At only 4, she was too young to grasp the gravity of what was happening, yet her solemn eyes moved between her parents with a kind of instinctive knowing. Helen had testified weeks earlier in Phoenix, recounting with steady dignity how she'd witnessed Melissa falsifying charts, how she'd seen her pocket money from Valerie's purse, how she'd lived with guilt for years. Listening to her had been both heartbreaking and validating. Valerie, in those last weeks, had begged for relief from pain, while Melissa lied, telling her Medicare wouldn't cover stronger medication, only to sell the pills to dealers outside. That testimony had sealed Melissa's conviction. Elder abuse, theft, drug distribution. 4 years sentence, with possible parole after 2.5. But conviction didn't answer the question of who would raise the children. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s, adjusted her glasses and addressed the court. "Mrs. Harrington," she said to Melissa, "do you understand that your conviction for crimes involving vulnerable adults impacts your parental rights?" Melissa's lawyer, a weary man in a wrinkled suit, rose. "Your Honor, my client acknowledges her past mistakes, but she insists she poses no danger to her children. She's enrolled in parenting classes at the county facility, has expressed deep remorse, and wishes to maintain a relationship with both Lillian and James." Deep remorse, I thought bitterly. I remembered Melissa's expression at the baby shower when I first showed her Valerie's photograph. That had not been remorse, it had been fear. The judge turned to Daniel. "Mr. Harrington, you're seeking full custody?" "Yes, Your Honor." Daniel's voice was firm, though I saw the tremor in his hand as he rested it briefly on Lillian's shoulder. "I believe it's in their best interest. Both children are my responsibility." "And you understand the emotional and financial obligations this entails, particularly caring for an infant whose mother will remain incarcerated?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "James is my son. Biology is not the only measure of love." Pride surged in me, for all the blindness that had led him to Melissa, for all the years he had turned away from me. This was my boy, the boy who had once mended a broken-winged sparrow with tape and gauze, who defended smaller kids on the playground. That boy had grown into a man willing to shoulder his children's future. Melissa finally spoke, her voice hoarse. "Your Honor, I know I made terrible mistakes. But I love my children. I want to be in their lives. The judge regarded her steadily. Loving your children and being capable of safely parenting them are not synonymous, Mrs. Harrington. The court must weigh your actions. Exploiting vulnerable individuals for personal gain demonstrates a dangerous pattern. That was different, Melissa burst out, desperation giving her voice strength. Valerie wasn't family. I would never hurt my own children. The words landed like stones in water, sending ripples of shock through the courtroom. Even her lawyer winced. I closed my eyes briefly, picturing Valerie lying in that nursing home bed, bed sores festering, pain untreated. She had once been someone's daughter, someone's granddaughter. Family or not, she deserved better. The judge's voice chilled. That distinction tells me everything I need to know about your fitness as a parent. Melissa's face crumpled. The ruling came swiftly. Full custody to Daniel, with Melissa permitted supervised visitation upon her release, contingent on psychological evaluations and completion of parenting rehabilitation. Denise was granted temporary guardianship of James until Daniel could arrange proper care for both children. As the officer led Melissa away, she finally looked at me. Her eyes burned with hatred, but beneath it flickered something else. Acknowledgement, maybe, that I had dismantled her carefully constructed facade piece by piece. This isn't over, her lips shaped silently. I gave her the same smile I had worn at the baby shower. Calm, implacable. Yes, it is. Outside, the crisp October air smelled of fallen leaves and damp earth. Daniel walked beside me, silent, his hand resting lightly on Lillian's shoulder as she skipped ahead. Her innocence was almost unbearable. That evening, we sat on my back porch watching the sun sink beyond the maples, casting the yard in copper light. Lillian slept upstairs in the bedroom that had become hers now, surrounded by the books and toys I had kept all these years in hope. "Do you think she'll change?" Daniel asked, his voice heavy. "Prison, therapy, all those programs. Do you think it'll make her different?" I considered. Prison changes everyone. Whether it makes her better, or only better at hiding, I can't say. But some lines, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. Valerie's death, the money, those choices mark a person forever. Daniel leaned back, his face older, lined with regret. I keep replaying everything in my head. The warning signs I ignored, the lies I believed because I wanted to. I chose her version of life over the truth. "We see what we want to see," I said quietly, "especially in people we love." He nodded, staring into the darkening yard. A year ago, if someone had told me I'd be here, raising my children without Melissa, living with you again, I'd have thought they were insane. And yet, here you are, I said. We sat in silence until my phone buzzed. A text from Pamela, the child psychologist working with Lillian. She's adjusting beautifully. Her sense of security is growing. Keep doing what you're doing. I handed the phone to Daniel. He read it, and for the first time in months, he smiled. Not the forced smile of survival, but a genuine one. Small and real. "We're going to be okay," he said, and for the first time, I believed him. 6 months later, Melissa's sentencing had become old news in the local press. Her plea deal ensured she'd serve her time quietly, away from headlines. But for us, the consequences still echoed daily. Daniel had sold the house he once shared with her, moving back into my home until he could establish stability. I had become not just a grandmother, but a co-parent. Lillian thrived. She ran through my garden, chased butterflies, demanded bedtime stories. She asked occasionally about her mother, but accepted gentle explanations that Mommy made some mistakes and has to fix them. James grew plump in Denise's care, visiting weekly until Daniel could bring him home permanently. One chilly morning, as frost glittered across the lawn, Daniel joined me in the kitchen, coffee mug in hand. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked suddenly. "Regret what?" "Pulling that envelope out, exposing everything, blowing our lives apart." I met his gaze. "Regret protecting you? Protecting your children?" "No." "But it cost us everything," he whispered. "It cost us lies," I corrected, "and lies aren't worth keeping." He was quiet a long moment, then nodded. Later that day, as I watched Lillian teach James how to stack blocks, their laughter filling the living room, I thought of Valerie again. She had died alone, but at least now, belatedly, her truth had spoken. Justice had not come quickly, but it had come, and maybe, just maybe, so had healing. Winter in New Hampshire arrived hard that year, with snow piling against fences and frost creeping across window panes before dawn. Inside my house, the fire in the hearth kept us warm. Daniel had settled into the rhythms of single parenthood. Lillian adjusted to preschool, and James, now 6 months old, filled the rooms with baby squeals that softened even the hardest days. Life had taken on a strange duality. Quiet domestic routines laced with the lingering weight of Melissa's absence. Some nights I lay awake, wondering if exposing her had saved us or only fractured us further. But then I'd hear Lillian's laughter floating down the hall, or watch Daniel rock James to sleep, and I knew I hadn't destroyed a family. I had salvaged one. One afternoon, the mail brought a thin envelope from the Department of Corrections. Melissa had written a letter. The handwriting was jagged, rushed. "Eleanor," it began, "you won. Congratulations. But remember this, children grow up. They ask questions. And when they do, what will you tell them? That you ripped their mother away? That you paraded my mistakes in front of them? They'll hate you for it. They'll never forgive you. Enjoy your victory while it lasts." I folded the letter neatly, slid it back into the envelope, and placed it in a drawer. Melissa still thought of this as a contest, a battle of winners and losers. She hadn't learned yet that truth wasn't a prize. It was a foundation. That evening, as Daniel and I tucked Lillian into bed, she asked, "Daddy, will Mommy come home soon?" Daniel hesitated, then looked at me. His eyes held the question he couldn't answer alone. I sat on the edge of her bed, brushing her hair back from her forehead. "Sweetheart, your Mommy made some choices that mean she has to live somewhere else for a while, but she still loves you. And your daddy and I love you very, very much. That won't ever change." She nodded solemnly, processing with the resilience children seem born with. "Can I draw her a picture?" "Of course," I said, kissing her forehead. "She would like that." Later, Daniel admitted, "Sometimes I don't know how to talk to her about it, how much truth is too much." "You tell her what she needs to feel safe," I answered. "The rest will come when she's older." Months turned into a year. James toddled across the living room, chubby legs wobbly but determined. Lillian, 5 now, learned to ride her bike in the driveway, Daniel jogging beside her while I cheered from the porch. Ordinary moments, built on extraordinary survival. Melissa wrote occasionally from prison. Her tone shifted. Anger gave way to pleading, then to self-pity. She claimed to be reading parenting manuals, attending group sessions, learning to forgive herself, but her words always circled back to herself, never once mentioning Valerie, never once acknowledging the real harm she'd caused. I stopped reading after the 5th letter, tucking them into a shoebox I hid in the attic. One day the children might want to see them. For now, silence was better. 2 years later, parole hearings began. Daniel dreaded them, torn between wanting his children to know their mother and fearing what her presence might do to them. "I don't want to poison them against her," he said one night as we washed dishes together. "But I don't want to lie either." "Then don't," I said. "Let Melissa show them who she is. Children see clearer than we think." When Melissa was granted early release after serving 2.5 years, the court approved supervised visitation at a family center. The first meeting was awkward, strained. Lillian clung to Daniel's hand, reluctant. James, too young to understand, watched curiously from my lap. Melissa entered the room looking thinner, older, her face etched with lines prison had carved. She knelt down, reaching toward Lillian. "Sweetheart, it's Mommy." Lillian hid behind Daniel's leg. Melissa's eyes flicked to me, brimming with bitterness. "You turned her against me." "No," Daniel said quietly. "You did that yourself." The visits continued monthly. Sometimes Melissa was calm, sometimes volatile. Lillian tolerated them but rarely spoke afterward. James, still small, accepted her presence without judgment, but clung tighter to Daniel each time they left. Through it all, I remained steady, the anchor, the safe place. By the time Melissa had been out for a year, her pattern was clear. She talked about herself, her hardships, her regrets. She never asked about Valerie, never once uttered her name. She still didn't understand that remorse without accountability is meaningless. One summer afternoon, Lillian, now 7, sat beside me in the garden braiding dandelions into chains. She looked up suddenly. "Grandma, is Mommy bad?" The question pierced deep. "No, sweetheart," I said carefully. "She made very bad choices. She hurt someone when she should have helped. That doesn't make her evil, but it does mean we have to be careful." She seemed to weigh this. "Like when I make a mistake and have to sit in time out?" "Yes, but some mistakes take longer to fix." She nodded, satisfied with that answer for now. Years passed. Daniel rebuilt his career, balancing parenthood with work. Lillian grew into a thoughtful young girl, protective of her little brother, fiercely loyal to her father. James, curious and bright, followed Daniel everywhere, shadowing his every move. Melissa's presence remained on the periphery. Occasional supervised visits, inconsistent phone calls, promises unkept. By then, the children no longer leaned toward her for comfort. Their roots had taken hold in the soil Daniel and I tended daily. One crisp autumn evening, as we sat on the porch watching leaves spiral to the ground, Daniel turned to me. "I never said thank you." "For what?" "For saving us. For saving me from myself. I would have gone on believing her, letting her twist everything, if you hadn't had the courage to act." I looked at my son, the man I had raised, the father he had become. "It wasn't courage," I said softly. "It was necessity. And love." He reached for my hand, squeezing it, eyes glistening. "I know you carried the weight of being both parents after Dad died, and I know I let her make me forget that. I'll never let it happen again." We sat together in the quiet, broken but mended, scarred but stronger. Justice had been served, though imperfectly. Valerie's memory no longer languished in silence, and my family, reshaped, bruised, but enduring, had found a new way forward. Sometimes I think about Melissa's words in that first letter, that the children would hate me for tearing their mother away. She was wrong. They don't hate me. They run into my arms when I pick them up from school. They climb onto my lap when storms rattle the windows. They whisper secrets into my ear at bedtime. They know love when they feel it. Now tell me, what would you have done, standing in my shoes? Would you have stayed silent? Or would you have chosen, as I did, to let the truth speak, no matter the cost? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching. Don't forget to check out the video on your screen right now. It's one you won't want to miss.